Rachel finished checking the vitals on her last patient and glanced at the chronometer on the wall. 3 hours until her shift ended, and the intensive care unit had finally gone quiet. She preferred the night rotation. Fewer administrators breathing down her neck, fewer family members asking questions she couldn't answer. Just her, the soft beeping of monitors, and patients who needed her skills more than her bedside manner. The medical station orbited a human colony world called New Perth, but most of the beds held aliens. A Centaurian with 4 lungs struggling through pneumonia. 2 Verdantians recovering from a transport accident. A Kulthani whose crystalline structure had fractured during atmospheric entry. Rachel had learned to treat dozens of species during her 15 years in space medicine. Humans were actually her least common patients these days. That changed when the emergency shuttle docked at 0200 hours. She heard the commotion before she saw it. The triage team rushed through the ward, pushing a gurney, their voices tight with concern. Rachel stepped into the corridor and felt her stomach drop. The patient was human, a child, maybe 7 or 8 years old, unconscious and pale as starlight. What happened? Rachel asked, falling in a step beside the gurney. Found her collapsed at the colony school, one of the paramedics said. He was a Verdantian, his leaf-like skin rustling with agitation. Vitals are weak. No obvious trauma. Parents said she's been getting weaker for weeks. They transferred the girl to ICU bed 7, the one closest to the observation window that looked out into space. Rachel began her examination while the other staff prepped monitors and 4 lines. The child's breathing was shallow, her heartbeat irregular. Her skin felt cold despite the thermal blankets. Name? Rachel asked. Sophie Chun. Age 8. No prior medical history until 6 weeks ago. The nurse pulling up her file was human too, a young man named David who usually worked in pediatrics. His hands shook slightly as he attached the electrodes. Rachel studied the data flooding across the screens. Every number looked wrong. White blood cell count dropping. Neural activity decreasing. Body temperature falling despite every warming measure. It was like watching someone's life force slowly leak away. Have we seen this before? David asked quietly. Not in humans, Rachel admitted. Run a full spectral analysis. Check for toxins, pathogens, anything exotic that might have transferred from alien biology. The test would take hours. Rachel stayed with Sophie, monitoring every fluctuation, every change. The girl's parents arrived just before dawn, their faces hollow with fear and exhaustion. Rachel explained what little she knew and promised to find answers. She hated making promises she might not keep. After the parents left to rest in the family quarters, Rachel stood by Sophie's bedside and stared out the window. The colony world rotated slowly below, its oceans catching the light of the system's orange sun. Space stations like this one were supposed to be marvels of medical technology, places where species from across the galaxy came for treatment. But sometimes Rachel felt helpless against the universe's infinite ways to harm fragile living things. That's when she noticed the creature. IT sat on the narrow ledge outside the window, barely visible against the darkness of space. At first, Rachel thought it might be debris or a maintenance drone. Then it moved, shifting its weight and folding what looked like wings against its body. The thing was small, maybe the size of a house cat, with scales that reflected the station's running lights in shades of copper and gold. Rachel stepped closer to the window. The creature turned its head and looked directly at her. Its eyes glowed with an inner light, intelligent and aware. She recognized the species immediately. Draconid, a dragon, though most people in the galaxy just called them drakes to avoid sounding ridiculous. Draconids were rare and notoriously antisocial. They lived in the volcanic regions of their homeworld and rarely left it. When they did travel, they kept to themselves and avoided other species entirely. Rachel had never seen one up close. She certainly had never heard of one perching outside a medical station window. The creature watched her for a long moment, then turned its attention to Sophie's bed. Its glowing eyes tracked the rise and fall of the child's chest. Then, moving with surprising gentleness, the tiny dragon curled into a ball on the ledge and closed its eyes that IT looked like it was settling into sleep. Rachel frowned. The ledge was exposed to vacuum and radiation. Even draconids, with their legendary toughness, shouldn't be comfortable in raw space without protection. Yet there it was, apparently napping outside the ICU like this was perfectly normal behavior. "David," she called. The nurse appeared at her shoulder. "You seeing this?" "The Drake?" David's eyes widened. "How long has it been there?" "Just arrived." "Any idea why a draconid would camp outside our window?" David shook his head slowly. "Drakes don't do this. They don't approach other species. They definitely don't hang around hospitals." Rachel pulled up the station's external camera feeds and tracked backward through the recordings. The draconid had approached from the direction of the docking ring, flying through open space with powerful beats of its wings. It had circled the medical section twice before landing on this specific ledge, outside this specific window, next to this specific patient. "Coincidence?" David suggested, but he didn't sound convinced. Rachel looked at Sophie's pale face, then at the sleeping dragon beyond the glass. In 15 years of space medicine, she had learned that the universe rarely dealt in coincidences. "Keep monitoring her vitals," Rachel said. "I want to know if anything changes. Anything at all." She pulled up a data terminal and began researching draconid behavior. If that creature was here for a reason, she intended to find out what it was. Outside the window, the tiny dragon slept on, its body radiating a faint warmth against the cold dark of space. 5 nights had passed since Sophie arrived, and the tiny dragon had returned every single one of them. Rachel tracked its pattern obsessively. The draconid would appear around midnight, always approaching from the same vector. It would land on the ledge outside Sophie's window, turn 3 complete circles like a cat finding the perfect spot, then curl up and close its eyes. It stayed until the station's artificial dawn cycle began at 0600, then launched itself back into space and disappeared. Sophie's condition continued to deteriorate. The test results had come back showing nothing. No toxins, no pathogens, no genetic markers for any known disease. Her body was simply shutting down, system by system, and nobody could explain why. The colony's best doctors came aboard to consult. They all left shaking their heads. Rachel spent every night shift in the ICU, partly because someone needed to watch over Sophie, partly because she couldn't stop thinking about the dragon. She had pulled every file in the medical database about draconids. The species was ancient, proud, and powerful despite their relatively small size. Adult drakes could breathe fire hot enough to melt steel. Their scales were nearly impenetrable. They lived for centuries and viewed most other species as beneath their notice. What the files didn't explain was why a juvenile draconid would maintain a vigil outside a dying human child's window, but on the 6th night, Rachel made a decision that would have gotten her laughed out of any medical conference. She pulled a chair up to the window and started talking to the creature. "I don't know if you can hear me through the glass," she said quietly. Sophie was sleeping behind her, her breathing aided by a respirator now. "I don't know if you understand human language, but you keep coming back, and I think you're here because of her." The dragon's eyes opened. They glowed like embers in the darkness, fixed on Rachel's face. "The thing is, I don't understand why. Your species doesn't do this. You don't form attachments to aliens. You don't even acknowledge we exist most of the time." Rachel leaned forward, her breath fogging the glass. "So what makes Sophie different? What do you see that I'm missing?" The draconid tilted its head, studying her with an intensity that made Rachel's skin prickle. It did something unexpected. It stood up on its hind legs and pressed one small clawed hand against the window, right where Rachel's palm rested on the other side. For a moment they stayed like that, separated by reinforced glass and the vast gulf between species. Then the dragon settled back down and closed its eyes again, resuming its vigil. Rachel felt something shift in her chest. Understanding, maybe, or just the beginning of it. She pulled up a new search on her terminal, this time focusing on draconid sensory abilities. What she found made her pulse quicken. Draconids were empathic to thermal signatures. They could sense heat patterns in living beings, reading them like humans read facial expressions. More than that, they could detect pain and distress through changes in body temperature that other species couldn't perceive. The dragon wasn't just seeing Sophie. It was feeling her suffering. "David," Rachel called across the ward. The night nurse looked up from his station. "What's the body temperature differential between a healthy human child and Sophie right now?" David checked his screens. "Sophie's running almost 3 degrees below normal. We've been trying to warm her, but nothing works." And the dragon's body temperature? Draconids run hot. Average internal temp around 150 degrees Fahrenheit. "What?" Rachel stared at the sleeping creature beyond the glass. Its scales gave off a faint glow, heat radiating even through vacuum. It's trying to help her. It senses she's cold, that she's dying, and it's staying close to try to warm her. Through a vacuum and reinforced glass? That's impossible. "I know, but look at the way it positions itself." Rachel pulled up the external camera recordings from the past 6 nights. In every single one, the draconid placed itself at the exact spot where Sophie's bed sat on the other side of the wall. It's trying to share its heat with her. The fact that it can't doesn't matter. It keeps trying anyway. David moved closer to study the recordings. Why would it care? It's never even been in the same room as her. Rachel thought about that for a long time. She thought about humans and their strange ability to form bonds with animals. Dogs, cats, horses, even wild creatures that by all rights should fear or ignore people. Humans had a gift for crossing the boundaries between species, for seeing past scales and fur and chitin to find common ground. But this was different. This was a dragon choosing to care about a human. "Maybe it works both ways," Rachel said softly. "Maybe humans aren't the only ones who can feel compassion across species lines. Maybe we just never gave anyone else the chance to show it." Sophie stirred in her bed, whimpering in her sleep. Her monitors showed her heart rate spiking, her brain activity surging with what were probably nightmares. Rachel moved to her side, adjusting the 4 and checking her vitals. The numbers were getting worse. Outside the window, the dragon's eyes snapped open. It stood up, agitated, and began making soft sounds that Rachel could barely hear through the glass. They sounded like whimpers, like distress calls. The creature pressed itself against the window, its small body tense with concern. Rachel made a choice. She went to her terminal and filed a request with station administration. It was a long shot, probably career suicide, but she didn't care anymore. She requested permission to bring the draconid inside for a supervised medical visit. The response came back in less than an hour. "Denied. Too dangerous. Too unprecedented. Too many liability concerns." Rachel read the denial and felt something harden in her chest. She looked at Sophie, whose breathing had become more labored. She looked at the dragon, who was now pacing the narrow ledge like a caged animal. She thought about rules and regulations and all the reasons why people said things couldn't be done. Then she thought about a dying child and a creature that had chosen, against all its nature, to care. Rachel pulled up the Windows environmental controls and stared at the override command. One keystroke. That's all it would take. Not tonight, she told herself. But soon if Sophie got any worse, Rachel would break every rule in the book. She would face whatever consequences came. Because sometimes caring meant taking risks that terrified you. Outside, the tiny dragon settled back into its sleeping position, maintaining its hopeless vigil through another long night. Sophie opened her eyes for the first time in 4 days during the afternoon shift on the 8th day. Rachel wasn't there when it happened. She was sleeping in her quarters after another exhausting night. But David called her immediately, and she arrived in the ICU, still wearing her off-duty clothes, her hair uncombed. The girl was awake but barely responsive. Her eyes tracked movement but showed no recognition. Her parents sat on either side of the bed, holding her hands and crying with relief mixed with fear. Sophie looked at them but didn't seem to know who they were. Neurological damage, Rachel asked David quietly. Extensive. Her brain activity is minimal. It's like she's locked inside herself. He paused. Dr. Rachel, even if we find a cure for whatever's killing her, I don't think she's coming all the way back. Rachel felt the words like a physical blow. She had seen this before with other species, patients who survived the disease but lost themselves in the process. It was sometimes harder than death for the families. She was updating Sophie's charts when something made her look up at the window. It was only 1,400 hours, still early afternoon by the station's clock. The dragon never appeared during daylight, but there it was, pressed against the glass, its glowing eyes fixed on the bed. Sophie's head turned slowly. Her unfocused gaze drifted across the room and landed on the window. For a moment, nothing happened. Then something changed in her expression. Her eyes widened. Her mouth opened slightly. She smiled. It was barely there, just a slight curve of her lips, but it was real. Sophie lifted one trembling hand and pressed it against the glass from her side. The dragon moved immediately. It stood on its hind legs and placed its small clawed hand exactly opposite hers. They couldn't touch through the barrier, but they mirrored each other perfectly. That Rachel's breath caught in her throat. "David," she whispered, "are you seeing this?" "Yeah." His voice was thick with emotion. "What does it mean?" Rachel moved closer, watching the interaction. Sophie's eyes had focused. For the first time in days, there was awareness in them. Not full consciousness, not yet, but something more than the empty stare she'd had moments before. The girl was seeing the dragon. And somehow, impossibly, it mattered to her. Rachel pulled up her research terminal and started searching through her notes about human neurological responses. There were old studies from Earth about animal-assisted therapy, about how interaction with animals could reach patients that human contact couldn't. Dogs visiting hospitals, horses working with disabled children, dolphins helping people with trauma. But those were Earth animals, creatures that had evolved alongside humans for thousands of years. This was an alien species from a world humans had only discovered 50 years ago. There should be no biological basis for connection. Yet Sophie's monitors showed increased brain activity. Her heart rate had strengthened. The smile remained on her face even as her hand slid down the glass, exhaustion claiming her again. The dragon stayed at the window until Sophie fell asleep. Then it launched itself back into space, vanishing from sight. Rachel made her decision right then. She waited until the night shift started, until Sophie's parents had been convinced to rest, until the ICU held only David and herself and the sleeping patients. Then she went to the window and pulled up the environmental controls. "What are you doing?" David asked, alarm in his voice. "Something that will probably get me fired." Rachel's hands moved across the control panel. "But I don't care anymore." "Rachel, you can't. The safety protocols exist for a reason. That thing is a predator. It could hurt her. Look at her, David." Rachel gestured at Sophie's motionless form. "She's dying. We tried everything that's allowed, everything that's safe, and she's still dying. That dragon has spent every night for over a week trying to help her. I'm not going to stop it anymore. This is insane." "Maybe." Rachel found the override command and hesitated. Her career, her reputation, possibly her freedom, all balanced on this choice. But sometimes the insane thing is the right thing. She entered her authorization code and disabled the Windows safety locks. The change was subtle. The glass remained in place, but the electromagnetic seals disengaged. The window could now be opened manually from the inside. Rachel gripped the release handle and pulled. The window slid open on silent tracks. Station atmosphere hissed out briefly before the environmental system compensated. Cold air rushed in, carrying the metallic scent of recycled oxygen from the outer hull. And the dragon, who had appeared right on schedule at midnight, stopped circling and stared at the open window. Rachel stepped back from the opening. "Come on," she said softly. "I know you can hear me. I know you understand more than anyone thinks. She needs you." The dragon had hovered in space for a long moment, its wings beating steadily. Then it folded them and dove through the window, landing with surprising grace on the floor. Up close, it was smaller than Rachel had thought. Definitely juvenile, probably not even a year old. Its copper and gold scales caught the ICU's lights and threw back reflections like scattered coins. It looked at Rachel with those glowing eyes and made a sound somewhere between a purr and a question. "Go ahead," Rachel said, gesturing to Sophie's bed. "I won't stop you." The dragon moved forward slowly, almost cautiously. It reached the bed and paused, studying the sleeping child. Then Moving with a gentleness that seemed impossible for something with claws, it climbed up onto the mattress beside her. Sophie didn't wake. But as the dragon curled against her side, fitting its small body into the curve of her ribs, her breathing deepened. Her face relaxed, and her monitors showed something Rachel had been praying for. Her body temperature was rising, not from external warming measures or heated blankets, from the dragon pressed against her, sharing its natural heat directly with her failing body. Impossible, David breathed. He was watching the monitors over Rachel's shoulder. Her core temp is up half a degree already. Rachel pulled up a chair and sat down to observe. She activated her personal recorder and began documenting everything. If she was going to break the rules, she would at least provide the data to justify it. The dragon made a soft sound, almost like a cat's purr, and closed its eyes as Sophie's hand moved in her sleep, coming to rest on the dragon's back. Rachel watched through the night as the impossible happened. The child's temperature continued to rise, degree by careful degree, until it reached normal human range for the first time in weeks. Her heart rate strengthened. Her brain activity increased. By morning, Sophie's monitors showed improvement across every measured category. The dragon had fallen asleep, its breathing synchronized with the child's. Rachel knew there would be consequences. The day shift would arrive and see what she had done. Administration would be notified. There would be hearings, probably charges. But watching Sophie sleep peacefully for the first time since her arrival, watching the tiny dragon maintain its protective vigil from inside the room instead of out, Rachel found she didn't regret a single choice. Sometimes caring meant breaking the rules. Sometimes it meant risking everything for a chance at saving one life. As artificial dawn broke across the station, Rachel started writing her report, ready to face whatever came next. Dr. Patricia Wong arrived at 0800 hours, took one look at the dragon sleeping on Sophie's bed, and immediately ordered everyone out of the ICU. Rachel refused to leave. She stood between Patricia and the bed, her jaw set, her body language making it clear she would physically fight if necessary. Behind her, the dragon had woken at the commotion and was making low warning sounds in its throat. "You brought an uncontained predator into my medical facility," Patricia said. Her voice was cold, controlled, and absolutely furious. "You violated a dozen safety protocols. You could be charged with criminal negligence. Look at her vitals." Rachel shot back. She gestured at the monitors above Sophie's bed. "Every number has improved. Her temperature is normal for the first time in 2 weeks. Her brain activity is the strongest it's been since admission. That dragon is healing her. That's scientifically impossible." Then explain the data. Patricia moved closer to study the monitors, her expression skeptical. But Rachel saw the moment. The skepticism wavered. The numbers didn't lie. Sophie's condition had improved more in 1 night with the dragon than in 8 days of intensive human medical care. It could be coincidental, Patricia said, but she sounded less certain. For 8 nights, the dragon maintained a vigil outside this window. Every night, same time, same position. Last night, I let it inside, and Sophie immediately began recovering. You want to call that coincidence? The dragon made another sound, this one directed at Sophie. The girl stirred in her sleep, her hand moving to rest on the creature's back. The dragon settled down again. Watching the 2 human doctors with wary eyes, Patricia was quiet for a long moment. Then she pulled out her tablet and began accessing files. Draconid biological data. Let me see what we have. Rachel felt a small surge of hope. Patricia was many things, most of them frustrating, but she was also a brilliant physician. If she was willing to look at the evidence, there might be a chance. They spent the next hour reviewing everything. Draconid physiology, their thermal regulation systems, their empathic abilities, the documented cases of draconids showing unusual behavior around other species, which were rare but not unheard of. Their body heat includes trace amounts of regenerative enzymes. Patricia read from a xenobiology journal. These enzymes are produced in specialized glands near the heart and distributed through their bloodstream. The heat they radiate carries these enzymes in gaseous form. Could those enzymes affect human biology? Rachel asked. Unknown. There's never been close enough contact to study it. Patricia looked at the dragon, her scientific curiosity clearly warring with her medical caution. No documented cases of sustained physical contact between draconids and any other species. Until now, Patricia set down her tablet. I should report this immediately. I should have that creature removed and you suspended pending investigation. Rachel's heart sank. But you're not going to. I'm going to give you 24 hours. Patricia's voice was firm. I want continuous monitoring. Full biometric scans of both the patient and the draconid. Blood work every 4 hours. If Sophie shows any sign of negative reaction, any sign at all, that creature leaves immediately and you face formal charges. Understood. Understood. Rachel tried to keep the relief out of her voice. 24 hours. It was more than she had expected. Patricia moved toward the door, then paused. And Rachel, I'm only doing this because I've known you for 10 years and I trust your judgment. Don't make me regret it. After she left, Rachel set up the monitoring equipment with David's help. They collected baseline data from the dragon, which tolerated the scanners with surprising patience. Its body temperature registered at 147 degrees Fahrenheit, consistent with draconid norms. Blood samples showed the regenerative enzymes in high concentrations. Sophie woke around noon. Her eyes were clearer than they had been, more focused. She looked at Rachel, then at David, then down at the small dragon curled beside her. Dragon, she whispered. Her voice was hoarse from disuse, but understandable. Rachel moved closer. Yes, sweetheart. It's been watching over you. Pretty. Sophie's hand stroked the dragon's scales gently. The creature made that purring sound again, leaning into her touch. Do you feel better? Rachel asked. Sophie nodded slowly. Warm. Was cold before. So cold. It was the most she had spoken since arriving at the station. Her parents were called, and they arrived within minutes, crying and laughing as they heard their daughter's voice. The dragon watched the family reunion with intelligent eyes, never moving from its position at Sophie's side. Over the next 12 hours, Rachel documented everything. Sophie's temperature remained stable. Her heart rate normalized. Her neurological responses improved steadily. Blood tests showed the presence of unknown enzymes in her system, foreign proteins that her immune system was somehow accepting rather than attacking. The enzymes from the dragon's body heat were integrating with Sophie's biology. This shouldn't be possible, David said, staring at the test results. Cross-species enzyme transfer doesn't work like this. Her body should be rejecting these proteins. Rachel thought about all the research she had read on human biology, on the strange way humans responded to animal contact. How therapy animals could lower blood pressure and reduce stress hormones. How children raised with pets had stronger immune systems. How humans could form emotional bonds with creatures that had no evolutionary reason to bond back. Maybe human biology is more adaptable than we think, she said. Maybe we're built to accept help from unexpected places. As evening approached, news of the dragon spread through the station. Medical staff found excuses to walk past the ICU, catching glimpses of the impossible partnership. A few alien patients asked to see it, curious about the creature that had everyone talking. The dragon tolerated the attention but never left Sophie's side. It seemed to understand that she needed it there. Rachel was updating her reports when the station's communication system alerted her to an incoming message. High priority. Origin point. Draconid homeworld. Her stomach dropped. The message was brief and formal. A delegation of draconid elders was en route to the station. Estimated arrival, 18 hours. Purpose, retrieval of lost juvenile. They're coming for it, David said, reading over her shoulder. Rachel looked at the dragon, who had become so focused on Sophie's recovery. She looked at Sophie, who was sleeping peacefully with one hand resting on the creature's back. They can't take it, Rachel said. Not while Sophie still needs it. They're the dragon's people. They have the right. And Sophie has the right to live. Rachel's voice was fierce. That dragon chose to stay. It chose to help her. Doesn't that choice matter? David had no answer. Rachel spent the rest of her shift preparing for the delegation's arrival. She compiled all her data, all her observations, every scrap of evidence showing the dragon's healing effect on Sophie. She didn't know if it would make a difference to beings who had never cared about human concerns before, but she would fight for both of them. The tiny dragon, seeming to sense her thoughts, opened one glowing eye and looked at her. In that gaze, Rachel saw intelligence, understanding, and something else, determination. Whatever came, they would face it together. The Draconid elders arrived in a ship that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of volcanic rock. 3 of them came aboard the station, each one significantly larger than the juvenile sleeping in Sophie's bed. Their scales ranged from deep crimson to black, and their eyes burned with the intensity of forged fires. Rachel met them in the conference room adjacent to the ICU. She had dressed in her formal medical whites and brought her tablet loaded with every piece of data she had collected. Patricia stood beside her, having decided that facing angry alien elders was a problem that required administrative authority. The largest of the 3 Draconids spoke first. His voice sounded like gravel sliding down a mountain. "I'm called Ironscale. We have come for our lost child. You will return it immediately." "The juvenile is not lost," Rachel said, keeping her voice steady despite her racing heart. "It came here by choice and remains by choice. Impossible. Draconids do not choose to remain among aliens. We are solitary people. We do not form attachments outside our kind." Ironscale's eyes narrowed. "You have somehow trapped it here. Some human trick or technology." "No trick. Just a sick child who needed help." Rachel activated her tablet and projected the medical data onto the conference room wall. "For 9 days, your juvenile maintained a vigil outside our ICU. When I allowed it inside, it immediately began healing our patient through direct thermal contact." The 3 elders studied the data in silence. Rachel watched their expressions, trying to read alien body language. They seemed confused more than angry now. "This makes no sense," the second elder said. She was smaller than Ironscale, but moved with a dancer's grace. "Draconid healing properties do not transfer to other species. Our biology is too different. The evidence suggests otherwise," Patricia interjected. "The patient's recovery has been remarkable and directly correlates with the juvenile's presence." "Show us," Ironscale demanded. Rachel led them to the ICU. Through the observation window, they could see Sophie sitting up in bed, awake and alert. The tiny dragon was curled in her lap, and she was reading to it from a children's book her parents had brought. Her voice was still weak, but it was steady. The juvenile looked up as the elders approached. Its eyes widened, and it made a small sound, something between recognition and apprehension. But it didn't move from Sophie's lap. "Come, young one," Ironscale said, his voice carrying through the glass. "We have come to bring you home." The juvenile dragon looked at Sophie, then back at the elders. It made a decision that shocked everyone in the room. It growled. A small sound, nothing compared to the deep rumbles the elders could produce, but unmistakably a refusal. Ironscale's scales rippled with what Rachel guessed was surprise. "You defy your elders? This is unprecedented." The juvenile shifted its position, placing itself between Sophie and the window. Protecting her, the 3rd elder, who had been silent until now, spoke in a voice like wind through canyons. "The prophecy. Could it be true?" "What prophecy?" Rachel asked. Ironscale was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight of history. "There's an old story among our people, a legend from before we had spaceflight, before we knew other intelligent species existed. It speaks of a soft people who would come from the stars, a people with weak bodies but strong hearts. The legend said they would have a gift, the ability to touch the souls of others, to form bonds that crossed all natural boundaries. We thought it was myth," the 2nd elder added, "a story to teach younglings about theoretical ideals. No species we encountered matched the description. Until now." Rachel felt something shift in the room. The elders were looking at her differently now, and at Sophie through the window, not with hostility, but with something like wonder. "Humans," Ironscale said slowly, "you are the soft people of the prophecy." "I don't understand," Rachel admitted. "What does this mean?" "It means," the 3rd elder said, that what we are witnessing should not be possible by the laws of biology, but perhaps it is possible by older laws, the laws of connection, of compassion. The second elder moved closer to the window. Our young do not care for other species. They barely tolerate their own clutch mates. Yet this one has chosen to stay with your child, has chosen to share its life force with her. Such a thing has never happened in our recorded history. The enzymes in our body heat are meant only for healing our own kind, Ironscale explained. Yet your child's body accepts them, more than accepts. It integrates them as if they were meant for her. This is beyond science. Then what is it? Patricia asked. Choice, the third elder said simply. Our young one chose to care, and your child's body chose to accept. Two beings deciding that the boundaries between species matter less than the simple need for connection. Rachel looked through the window at Sophie and the dragon. The girl had stopped reading and was watching the elders with wide eyes. The dragon had relaxed slightly, but remained vigilant. So you'll let it stay? Rachel asked, hardly daring to hope that Ironscale's expression was unreadable. That depends. What happens when your child is healed? Will the bond break? Will our young one return to us? I don't know, Rachel admitted. I've never seen anything like this before. None of us have. Then we must consider carefully. Ironscale looked at the other elders. They seemed to communicate something without words. We will allow the juvenile to remain while the child heals. But we will also stay to observe, to understand what is happening. This could change everything we know about our people. And if the juvenile wants to stay permanently, Patricia asked, then we face a question no draconid has ever faced before, the second elder said. Can one of our kind choose a life among aliens? Should they be allowed to? The third elder made a sound that might have been a laugh. Perhaps the real question is whether we can stop them. Free will is a powerful force, even among the young. They agreed to terms. The elders would remain on the station, observing but not interfering. Rachel would continue documenting Sophie's recovery and the juvenile's behavior. After Sophie was fully healed, they would reconvene and discuss the future. As the elders left to settle into guest quarters, Rachel returned to the ICU. Sophie was looking tired but happy. The dragon had returned to its favorite position, curled against her side. The big dragon seemed angry, Sophie said quietly. They're not angry, Rachel assured her. Just surprised. You and your friend are doing something very special. Something that's never happened before. Is that okay? To do something new? Rachel smiled. Sometimes the best things are the ones nobody's done before. Sophie stroked the dragon's scales gently. I like being warm again. I like having a friend. The dragon purred and nuzzled closer. Rachel updated the medical charts and noted that Sophie's enzyme integration was now at 60%. At this rate, she would make a full recovery within a week. But the real question remained unanswered. What happened after the healing was complete? Would the bond remain? Could a human child and a dragon build a life together? Rachel didn't know. But watching them sleep together that night, she found herself hoping for impossible things. Sometimes hope was all you had, and sometimes it was enough. 3 weeks after Sophie's arrival at the station, Rachel signed the discharge papers. The girl stood in the ICU, wearing regular clothes instead of hospital gown, her color healthy, her eyes bright. The dragon perched on her shoulder like it had always belonged there, its copper and gold scales catching the light. Every medical test showed complete recovery. The mysterious illness that had been killing her was gone, replaced by an immune system that now carried traces of draconid regenerative enzymes. Sophie was more than healed. She was changed on a cellular level. How do you feel? Rachel asked, performing one final check of her vitals. Good. Strong. Sophie reached up to scratch under the dragon's chin. It made that purring sound that had become familiar to everyone on the medical staff. Can we really go home? You really can. Rachel smiled, though she felt a bittersweet edge to her happiness. Sophie's recovery was everything she had hoped for, but it had opened questions that nobody knew how to answer. The draconid elders had spent 3 weeks observing, documenting, and debating among themselves. Today they would make their final decision about the juvenile's future. Rachel had been invited to the meeting, along with Sophie's parents and Patricia. They gathered in the same conference room where they had first met. The three elders sat on one side of the table, their massive forms making the human furniture look like toys. Sophie sat across from them, her parents on either side, the dragon in her lap. Ironscale spoke first. "We have witnessed something unprecedented, a bond between species that should not exist, a healing that defies our understanding of biology, and most significantly, a choice made by one of our young to place another being's welfare above its own instincts. Our juvenile should have returned to us the moment the child was healed," the second elder said. "Instead, it remains. It has made its preference clear." The third elder looked directly at Sophie. "Young human, do you understand what you are asking? To keep one of our kind as a companion means accepting responsibility for a being that will outlive you many times over. Draconids live for centuries. You will grow old and die while it is still young." Sophie's voice was steady when she answered. "My mom said that's true for all friends. Everyone leaves eventually, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't be friends while we can." The elders exchanged glances. Ironscale made a sound that might have been approval. "Wisdom from a child," he said. "Perhaps that is fitting." "Very well. We have reached a decision." Rachel held her breath. "The juvenile may remain with the human child on two conditions. First, that receives education in Draconid history and culture. We will not have one of our kind forget where it came from. Second, that it may return to our home world whenever it chooses, without interference from humans." "We agree," Sophie's father said immediately. "There is more," the second elder continued. "We have been studying the medical data Dr. Rachel provided, the enzyme integration, the healing properties, the way human biology accepts what should be foreign. We believe this is not unique to your child." Patricia leaned forward. "What are you suggesting?" "We are suggesting," Ironscale said, "that humans possess a unique neurochemical signature, something that triggers protective and nurturing instincts across species lines. It is why you can befriend animals on your homeworld, why you form emotional attachments to creatures that should be predators or prey, and apparently, why a Draconid juvenile chose to save one of your children. You're saying humans have a biological ability to create bonds?" Rachel asked. "More than ability. A gift." The third elder's voice was thoughtful. "We have traveled the galaxy for centuries and never formed a friendship with another species. In 3 weeks, a human child has done what we thought impossible. She has made us care." The second elder nodded. "Since the juvenile came to this station, we have been contacted by other Draconids across the galaxy. 7 more juveniles have approached human settlements, all of them seeking contact. Your species calls to ours in ways we do not fully understand. There are reports coming in from other human colonies too," Patricia added. She pulled up data on her tablet. "In the past month, 17 cases of cross-species bonding have been documented. Humans forming connections with aliens previously thought to be incompatible with cooperative behavior." Ironscale stood, his massive form casting shadows across the room. "This changes the balance of galactic society. For millennia, species have remained separate, each keeping to their own kind. Cooperation was transactional, based on mutual benefit and careful negotiation. But humans do not cooperate that way. You form genuine emotional bonds. You care, simply because you choose to care. Is that a problem?" Sophie's mother asked, her voice cautious. "It is revolutionary," the third elder said, "and perhaps exactly what the galaxy needs." The meeting ended with formal agreements and documentation. The juvenile dragon would remain with Sophie, becoming the first officially recognized human Draconid bond in history. The elders would return to their homeworld to share what they had learned and consider what it meant for their people's future. As they prepare to leave, Ironscale paused beside Rachel. "You broke your laws to save the child," he said. "You risked your position, your reputation, your freedom." "Why?" Rachel thought about how to explain it. Because she needed help. Because the dragon was trying so hard to save her. Because sometimes the right thing isn't the legal thing or the safe thing. It's just the thing that needs to be done. Compassion without calculation. Ironscale's eyes glowed brighter. "Yes, That is the human gift. We draconids are fierce, proud, strong. But you are something we never learned to be. You are kind. After the elders departed, Rachel walked Sophie and her family to the docking bay where their transport waited. The dragon rode on Sophie's shoulder, its tail wrapped loosely around her neck for balance. "Thank you," Sophie's mother said, hugging Rachel tightly. "Thank you for breaking the rules, for believing they could be friends. Thank you for trusting me," Rachel replied. Sophie stepped forward and hugged Rachel too. The dragon chirped and nuzzled Rachel's cheek with surprising gentleness. "Will you come visit us?" Sophie asked. "I will. I want to document how you two grow together. For science." Sophie grinned. "And because we're friends now too, right?" Rachel laughed. "Yes, because we're friends." She watched them board the transport, watched it detach from the station and accelerate toward the planet below. Then she returned to the ICU, which felt strangely empty without a dragon sleeping by the window. Patricia found her there an hour later. "I should still file charges against you for the protocol violations," Patricia said. "I know, but I'm not going to. Your unauthorized experiment just changed galactic medicine. Every hospital in human space is requesting information about cross-species healing applications. The medical journals are calling it the biggest breakthrough in decades." Rachel smiled tiredly. "So, I'm not fired? You're promoted. Head of Interspecies Medical Research. The position starts next month, after you take a mandatory vacation because you look like death. I'll take it." Rachel looked out the window at the stars. All of it. Over the following months, reports continued to flood in from across human space. Humans forming bonds with aliens previously thought incompatible with social interaction. Children befriending creatures that had never shown interest in other species. Adults finding companionship with beings that should have been dangerous. Wherever humans went, they built bridges. Not through technology or force or careful diplomacy, but through simple kindness. Through the choice to care about someone different, someone strange, someone who needed a friend. The galaxy was changing, one impossible friendship at a time. And somewhere on New Perth, a little girl and a dragon were growing up together, learning each other's languages, sharing each other's worlds. The tiny dragon no longer needed to sleep on the ICU window. Now it slept on Sophie's windowsill at home, keeping watch over its friend, its choice, its family. Because in the end, that's what humans did best. They turned strangers into family, one compassionate choice at a time. And the galaxy, fierce and proud and ancient, was learning to do the same.